Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Today, we will study the third verse of the Dhammapada together. The verses in the Dhammapada are often closely related to the activities and teachings of the Buddha. When we study the entire Dhammapada, it feels as if we are transported back to the time of the Buddha, experiencing the many vivid events and rich stories. Due to the nature of the Dhammapada, many stories are linked to specific verses. However, due to time constraints, we cannot cover all of these stories and will instead focus on the most significant ones. The third verse of the Dhammapada is derived from an important event in the Buddha's life of teaching. There was a time when the monks were divided into two factions and engaged in a fierce argument. This event was significant and imparted a profound lesson through the Buddha's teachings. Today, we will examine this third verse to better understand the circumstances surrounding this event and the lessons that the Buddha imparted. What teachings can we learn from this verse to apply in our monastic life and efforts in spreading the Dharma? This verse was quite difficult to grasp. In the past, when we studied this verse in classes, it was hard to fully understand what the Buddha intended to convey. The original translation of the verse was very literal and sometimes failed to convey the full meaning. During our studies, we had to refer to the English version to discover its true essence. Once we understood it clearly, we revised the translation to better reflect its meaning. The verse states, "They argue and strive because they forget that death awaits everyone. If they realize that death is certain, why would they argue?" At first glance, this line may seem simple, but it carries a profound truth. When one understands that death is inevitable, arguments become meaningless. This story takes place during the Buddha's time when he was gradually perfecting the system of rules and disciplines. The greatest disciple known for his expertise in these rules was Upali. However, after him, there were other monks who were also well-versed in the Vinaya, monastic rules. Each member of the Buddha's monastic community had their own specializations. Some focused on teaching the Dharma, while others specialized in upholding and protecting the rules. These monks had authority similar to the legal institutions of today, akin to law enforcement or the judiciary. They had the power to pronounce judgments, accuse someone of wrongdoing, and impose penalties. Senior elders often held this responsibility, serving as leaders within the community. Simultaneously, there were also other elders dedicated to teaching and disseminating the Dharma. In ancient times, the monastic community was divided into various groups, departments, and functions, operating in different locations. The Buddha frequently moved from place to stay with different groups of monks at various monasteries to be close to his disciples. During the 15th rainy season after his enlightenment, the Buddha visited Goita and stayed at a monastery with a group of monks. Among the monks, there were those who specialized in teaching the Dharma, Dharma masters, and those who specialized in teaching and practicing the Vinaya, Vinaya masters. The Vinaya in Buddhism is extremely detailed and meticulous, with very precise regulations. Lay Buddhists often do not fully understand this, but those who are ordained and study the Vinaya feel a sense of awe due to its unexpected level of detail. Every small action, from how to step, how to stand, to how to enter or leave a place, is clearly regulated. For example, when entering a house, one must know which foot to step in with first. When entering a place with a Buddha statue, one must know which side to approach first. Even while eating, pulling a chair should be done without making noise, otherwise one would be reprimanded. The posture for standing, how to converse with others, and how to arrange robes when sitting down are all precisely defined. The Vinaya masters were responsible for teaching and overseeing these regulations. The story occurred when a Dharma master, who specialized in teaching the Dharma and did not pay much attention to the Vinaya, was involved. This is still common today, where those who specialize in teaching often pay less attention to the Vinaya. while Vinaya masters focus on maintaining strict adherence. Nowadays, we see similar situations. But today there are fewer Vinaya masters and more Dharma teachers. In the Buddha's time, Vinaya masters were abundant. At the monastery in Goita, there were many Vinaya masters and Dharma teachers. One afternoon, a Dharma master entered the bathroom to bathe and filled a basin with water. After bathing, he left a little water in the basin, which was against the regulations. According to the Vinaya, after bathing, one must pour out all the water and place the basin upside down neatly so that the next person can use it as if it were new. When the Dharma master left, a Vinaya master entered and saw the basin left upright with some water remaining. He immediately asked, "Venerable sir, did you just bathe?" The Dharma master replied, "Yes. I just finished bathing." The Vinaya master continued, "Did you leave the basin upright and with some water remaining?" The Dharma master responded, "Yes. I left the basin upright with some water." The Vinaya master asked further, "Do you know that this is a fault?" The Dharma master, humbly, said, "I did not know it was a fault at that time. But now that I know, I ask for forgiveness." The Vinaya master replied, "It is all right. As long as you know it was a fault and have repented, then the fault is cleared, and there is no need to discuss further." They greeted each other, and the Vinaya master cleaned up, emptied the basin, and began to bathe. The story seemed simple enough. But after leaving, the Vinaya master told his disciples that the Dharma master had bathed but did not clean up properly, leaving some water in the basin without knowing it was a fault. The Vinaya master had hundreds of disciples, while the Dharma master also had hundreds of disciples in the same monastery. What the Vinaya master said seemed to be an ordinary remark, that the Dharma master had committed a fault unknowingly. This seemingly simple incident became serious because the Vinaya master did not fully explain the context. When his disciples heard it, they spread the story that the Dharma master had committed a fault but refused to admit it. Even after being corrected, the rumor spread throughout the monastery, causing everyone to discuss it incessantly. At that time, even such minor details were considered important, and this incident damaged the reputation of the Dharma master. When the rumor reached him, he was surprised and said, "I admitted my fault and repented." He said the matter was over. So why is he now saying otherwise? The Dharma master told his disciples, "That Vinaya master is lying. I admitted my fault properly. So why is he saying this?" From there, his disciples began to criticize that the Vinaya master was lying. The situation escalated, and both sides began to argue and pick faults with each other. The issue became noisy, and the monastery was clearly divided into two factions. Even those who were not disciples of either side chose different sides to support. Lay followers who came to the monastery heard the commotion, inquired, and were drawn into the argument. One side claimed the Dharma master was right, while the other argued that the Vinaya master was right. The entire area became divided, with one side supporting the Dharma master and the other supporting the Vinaya master. Not only on earth, but even in the heavens, the celestial beings and the Asuras looked down and followed the story. They also split opinions and debated. This Dharma master has a point, he didn't admit his fault initially. Another side said, but he did admit his fault. The debate spread from earth to the heavens, leading to a division even among the celestial beings. This story reached a serious point, prompting the monks to come to the Buddha and report that this trivial matter, which was not worth it, had caused great division throughout the residence. Even the lay followers were split into two factions, and even the celestial beings had divided into opposing sides. In ancient times, some monks possessed supernatural powers, allowing them to sense events in the heavenly realms and know these occurrences. The Buddha, upon hearing this, advised the monks to seek harmony, unity, and end the arguments. When the Buddha first spoke, the monks did not stop and continued to argue fiercely. The Buddha approached for the second time, but the monks responded, "Venerable Sir, you are already elderly. Please rest assured and practice in peace. Let us handle this matter ourselves. We need to clarify who is right and who is wrong. We cannot leave it unresolved. Please go and rest and meditate." On the third visit, the Buddha returned and spoke at length with profound words. He said, "You are the ones who bring the light of liberation to illuminate the world. Yet, with such a small matter, you cannot live in harmony and unity but argue with one another. How can you set an example for others? How can you be a refuge of peace for the gods, humans, and sentient beings everywhere?" The Buddha recounted many stories from ancient times, speaking of those who, due to arguments, suffered harm, even losing their lives and falling into misery. He delivered a long discourse to remind the monks of the consequences of conflict and the importance of harmony within the Sangha. Even after the Buddha's teachings, the monks remained unmoved. They said to him, "Venerable Sir, you are old and frail now. Please rest and practice for a tranquil mind. Don't worry about this matter, let us handle it ourselves and find out who is right and who is wrong. We cannot leave it unresolved." The Buddha only shook his head, feeling astonished by this situation. We can see how terrifying human stubbornness can be. Once involved in conflict, people may even ignore the advice of their master, to whom they have vowed lifelong allegiance. This story illustrates a strange and serious situation, reflecting human nature when caught in the cycle of winning and losing. Sometimes, within us, there are similar reactions to those of the monks back then. Initially, many people listen to Dharma talks, come to take refuge, and want to become disciples of a teacher. And the teacher does not refuse. However, when they are involved with the temple, work, and have their own opinions, some will argue with the teacher, believing the teacher to be wrong or less competent. At first, when learning the teachings, people admire the teacher for knowing more than they do. But when engaging in practical work, many believe they are more capable than the teacher and begin to criticize and find fault. Even the Buddha himself faced similar situations in the past. When he advised the monks and they did not listen, he did not impose punishment. This is a significant difference between Buddhism and other religions. In other religions, the religious leaders often have authority to control and change the fate of their disciples, with the power to punish or reward. In Buddhism, however, there is no such authoritative power. If disciples do not listen, then the law of karma will handle it, or the Dharma protectors will intervene. The Buddha never directly punished anyone. Finally, when the Buddha saw that there was no other way to advise the monks, he left, leaving behind a profound lesson on patience and non-coercion in guiding practitioners. One day, the Buddha went for alms and did not return to the monastery. Instead, he continued to visit Elder Pago. There, he gave a discourse to the elder and then went to a forest where 3 venerable monks resided. These 3 were once royal youths in the palace, who had renounced worldly life to ordain and attain enlightenment. They lived together in harmony and happiness in the forest. When the Buddha arrived at the forest, he inquired about the lives of the 3 venerables. He asked, "Do you live well here? Do you have enough to eat from alms?" The venerables responded, "Venerable Sir, we live well and have enough to eat. The villagers here are devoted, so we are always sufficiently provided for." The Buddha then asked, "Do you live in harmony with each other?" The three monks answered, "Venerable Sir, we live in harmony like milk and water." In the idioms of the Buddha's time, harmony like milk and water implied an inseparable bond. Unlike oil and water which cannot blend. The Buddha asked, "What is the principle or method you rely on to live in such harmony?" The monks answered, "Venerable Sir, we live in harmony by being aware of our own responsibilities. We do not wait for others to remind us. Every morning, whoever wakes up first will take the initiative to clean and sweep the area around the monastery. We arrange and clean everything necessary. After that, we go for alms and divide our routes. Moreover, after collecting alms, we always set aside a portion of food so that if any brother returns late or does not receive enough food, there will still be something for them. In everything we do, we live with the heart of brotherhood. Meaning we live for each other and not according to our own desires." The Buddha, hearing this, praised them, "You truly live in harmony and selflessness. It is through selflessness that you achieve absolute harmony." He commended the pure and united lives of these three arahants in the forest. First, the venerables lived with the steadfast belief that their brothers were virtuous, wise, and always correct. Second, because of this belief, they lived according to the heart of their brothers without questioning or doubting. All three relied on each other and acted according to the principle of selflessness, making their lives incomparably beautiful. The Buddha then confirmed their harmonious life and gave a special prophecy. He said, "From now on, anyone who hears the names of these three venerables, Kimdya, will find good fortune in life." The Buddha's prophecy implied that if a household experiences discord, chanting the names of these three venerables would bring peace. When facing difficulties or dangers at work, simply chanting their names would help make things smoother. The merit of their selfless and harmonious life created a miraculous power that would endure forever, recognized by the Buddha in the scriptures. Although this is a little-known sutra, it holds a miraculous power. Those who remember to recite the names of the three venerable monks will receive great assistance. Even monks rely on chanting their names to lessen the difficulties from their disciples. After visiting and teaching about the harmony of the three venerables, the Buddha continued to the Bullhorn Forest, where he gave the lesser discourse on living in harmony. Departing from that forest, he moved into the primeval Paraliyaka forest to live alone. As an enlightened one, the Buddha possessed great strength, and his mind was always serene. Even when living alone, his merit ensured that he was never without attendants. This time, the Buddha did not take his faithful attendant, Ananda, with him. When the Buddha was in the forest, a king elephant with an intelligence surpassing that of humans came to serve him, showing rare respect and devotion. We should remember that, among animals, elephants are known for their highly developed intuition and sensitivity, comparable to humans. Modern elephant trainers are aware of this, recognizing the remarkable natural intelligence of these creatures. Similarly, marine animals like whales and dolphins possess an extraordinary intellect and can understand human intentions. The king elephant mentioned in the scriptures had a special destiny. Tired of its large herd, it sought refuge in the Paraliyaka forest to live in solitude, where the Buddha was also residing. With its sharp intuition, the elephant recognized at first sight that the Buddha was a supreme holy being, greater than any deity or human. It willingly knelt down to pay homage and became a devoted disciple, attending to him every night. As the Buddha slept, the elephant would hold a leafy branch with its trunk to fan him, protecting him from mosquitoes and any potential dangers. Although the Buddha was not bitten by mosquitoes, the elephant persistently fanned to ensure his peace. The elephant patrolled around the Buddha's resting place to keep him safe. When the Buddha bathed, the elephant would clean the stream thoroughly, creating a shallow area surrounded by rocks and clearing debris so that fresh, clean water could flow in. Then, it would invite the Buddha to bathe. Each day, the king elephant would search for and pick the ripest and best fruits in the forest to offer to the Buddha. When the Buddha went for alms, the elephant would hold and carry his bowl, accompanying him to the edge of the forest, where the Buddha would take back his bowl and instruct the elephant not to follow him into the village. For 3 months, the king elephant faithfully attended to the Buddha as a devoted attendant, helping him live in complete peace and tranquility. The story also tells of an intelligent king monkey who, inspired by the elephant, decided to serve the Buddha with absolute reverence. The monkey realized that the Buddha was the supreme holy being. This devotion is similar to the story of Prince Nanda, who, despite being about to marry, was taken by the Buddha to ordain, showcasing an inexplicable level of respect. In this instance, the elephant and the monkey shared a deep reverence. However, the monkey did not live long in its joy of serving the Buddha. It leaped about, accidentally stepped on a fragile branch that broke, and fell onto another branch that pierced through its heart, leading to its death. Due to its intense devotion, it was immediately reborn in the heavenly realm. The king elephant continued to serve the Buddha throughout the entire rainy season. Meanwhile, at the Goita monastery, lay followers and devotees began to realize that the Buddha had left without leaving any farewell message. When they questioned the monks, they were told that the Buddha had advised them to stop arguing and live in harmony. But no one had listened, so he had departed. Hearing this, the lay followers became angry and reproached, "You have renounced the world, vowing to dedicate your lives to following the Blessed One. Yet, you don't even heed his words. You are not worthy of receiving our offerings and respect anymore. Do not come to see us from now on." Due to this strong reaction, throughout the entire rainy retreat, the monks could not go for alms and were not offered food. The scriptures note that they were so hungry they were on the verge of exhaustion, faint with weakness, with death looming. None had the strength to argue about right or wrong. The lay followers effectively imposed an economic embargo, leaving the monks in severe deprivation. A few still offered alms, but it was not enough to sustain the whole monastery. Even though they were starving to the point of near death, none dared leave the monastery because the rainy retreat regulations prohibited monks from going outside during this period. The law-abiding monks upheld the strict rules, so none dared violate them. The lecturers feared being criticized by the rule keepers. And the rule keepers, who specialized in enforcing discipline, could not break the rules to go begging for food themselves. As a result, they endured hunger within the monastery in a miserable state. Realizing the consequences of their meaningless argument, the monks began to repent and apologize to each other. They decided to abandon all grudges and live in harmony without further disputes. They wished to seek out the Buddha to express their remorse but had to wait until the rainy retreat was over before they could leave the monastery. After the retreat, the monks, weak and exhausted, finally gathered enough strength. When the retreat period ended, many monks from other places also returned and resolved to find the Buddha to seek his forgiveness. Venerable Ananda led a group of monks to the Paralyaka forest to meet the Buddha. First, Venerable Ananda entered, paid homage, and said, "Venerable Sir, the situation unfolded as such, and now the monks have realized their mistakes and humbly seek your forgiveness. Please return to live among us." The Buddha listened and agreed to meet the monks. When they approached, the king elephant, who had been serving as his guardian, displayed protective behavior. But the Buddha said, "These are my disciples," and the elephant calmed down. The Buddha looked at the monks and said, "Only because you did not think that everyone must eventually die did you continue to argue. If you all understood that impermanence is approaching, who would still seek to be superior? The Buddha recounted several old tales to illustrate the lesson. People argue because they forget that death awaits everyone. If one knows that death is near, what is the point of arguing? The Buddha's teachings were simple but full of admonishment, relevant to the context where the monks had nearly starved to death and now understood. The instinct to win had to give way to the instinct for survival when on the brink of death, leaving no energy for arguments. This experience led to the realization that if people argue excessively, letting them go hungry might stop the disputes. When the Buddha prepared to return with the monks, the king elephant escorted him to the edge of the forest. The Buddha said, "You cannot follow me, you must stay here. Being near humans is dangerous for you." The Buddha added, "This will be the last time we meet in this life. You will not see me again. And in this life, you will not attain any meditative or holy achievements. Only in your next life, when you are free from the animal body, will you achieve realization." The elephant listened, knelt, and bowed to the Buddha for the last time. The Buddha held his alms bowl and slowly walked away with the monks. The elephant watched his silhouette fade into the distance, and then it died of a broken heart on the spot, immediately being reborn in the heavenly realm. As the story goes, when leading the group of monks back and arriving in the land of King Pasenadi Kosala, the king heard that the group of monks from Goita was coming and personally came with his retinue to forbid the monks from entering his territory. However, upon meeting the Buddha, the king dismounted from his elephant, knelt, and said, "Venerable Sir, are these the monks who argued fiercely for the entire rainy retreat?" The Buddha replied, "Yes." King Pasenadi said, "I seek your permission to forbid them from entering my territory." The Buddha said, "Great King, these monks have realized their mistakes, repented, and reconciled. There is no need for such measures." Hearing this, King Pasenadi withdrew his ban and invited the monks into his territory. The king's intervention clearly demonstrated the strong role of the government and lay followers in correcting the mistakes of the Sangha. Typically, the Sangha guides lay people. But when the Sangha makes mistakes, lay people and the government can play a role in rectifying them. The monks are not always right. Except for the Buddha. Ordinary monks who have not attained arahantship still have ego and defilements. This can sometimes lead to divisions within the religious community, where some believe one sect is correct while others support another. These mistakes persist over time due to the lack of pressure from the government or lay followers. Unlike during the Buddha's time, in the past, simply enduring hunger would end disputes quickly, as near starvation left no energy for arguments. We see that this story began with a legal expert who refused to stay silent about a minor fault of a preacher, even though the preacher had already repented. From a small matter, it escalated into a major issue simply because one did not keep silent. This is a lesson for all of us. How many times in our lives have we seen minor faults in others and recounted them, causing unnecessary trouble? Not only does this lead to a loss of merit for ourselves, but it also disrupts the harmony in our relationships. The tongue is strange, sometimes it requires vigilance and control. Speaking unnecessarily, pointing out others' faults without restraint, is the cause of much trouble. When studying this sutra, we must vow and promise the Buddha to keep silent about others' faults and silently pray for them to amend their ways. Thus, if we recite this sutra every night, we will avoid the mistakes like those made by the legal expert, whose minor incident in the bathhouse spiraled into major conflict. Communal life loses its joy because of trivial faults. This is an essential lesson to remember. When rumors spread, they go beyond mere personal criticism and become issues that impact the reputation and honor of a teacher with 400 to 500 monastic disciples. For someone with few disciples, Reputation may not be as crucial. But for someone responsible for hundreds of monastic and thousands of lay disciples, reputation and honor become essential elements. A teacher's reputation is not about ego or superficial fame but is a means to continue teaching and guiding disciples. When a teacher holds the responsibility for a large number of disciples, their reputation is the foundation for disciples to listen and follow. Without reputation, teaching becomes ineffective, and no one pays attention. Similarly, today, even if a teacher does not care what others say about them personally, their reputation before their disciples is essential for teaching. When they have disciples, a teacher must clearly explain and defend their reputation to ensure the disciples' trust and continued learning. When they have no disciples, they can overlook all gossip without response. When rumors spread, the preacher had to defend his honor. To prove himself innocent, someone had to be held accountable. And in this case, the legal expert was blamed. However, the legal expert also had his reputation and honor to protect. So he could not remain silent and insisted he was not wrong. This made the situation more complicated, and the argument escalated. The reputation and honor of a teacher are not trivial but necessary tools for guiding disciples. Though enlightened masters do not cling to ego, they must maintain their reputation to continue being role models. For instance, the story of Zen master Dongshan when he was nearing death. He told his disciples, "I have fame in this world, who can help me put it aside?" A disciple stepped forward and asked to take on his teacher's name, making Dongshan smile and say, "My fame is now gone." He then passed away peacefully. This shows that for enlightened masters, fame is illusory. Yet it is necessary as a means to fulfill their mission of teaching. Master Dongshan did not directly state this but instead asked his disciples who could understand the true meaning of fame. One disciple understood that fame and reputation were merely illusions and reached out, saying, "Master, please give me your name." That name could not be grasped, it had no substance. Only a shadow. Master Dongshan smiled, knowing that this disciple had comprehended that fame was not of real importance. Thus, why bother removing fame when it inherently holds no true value? The master was delighted that a disciple had reached this understanding and attained enlightenment. Even though enlightened masters see fame as illusory, reputation and honor are still essential when it comes to teaching and guiding disciples. Reputation allows a teacher to continue instructing and leading not for personal gain but out of responsibility for their students. A small fault, when scrutinized, can escalate into something serious when it touches on matters of reputation and honor. This is the second point to note. The third point is that when many people get involved in an issue, the collective mindset becomes more entrenched. When crowds interfere, stubbornness and intransigence become intensified and feed off each other. For example, if only 2 or 3 people see someone sneak into the kitchen and take food, it might be resolved simply with an apology, acknowledging that hunger drove them to act so they could have the energy to chant or meditate. The matter would end there. However, if many people learn about it and gossip, the situation escalates. The collective judgment adds pressure, and the theft is magnified into a significant fault. When many people join in, each person insists on their opinion, and stubbornness grows. We should notice that if one person criticizes another alone, it is easier to let go. But if 5 people collectively share the same opinion, it becomes a permanent judgment, hard to change. The person criticized becomes labeled in the minds of the group indefinitely. Therefore, when many people participate in a matter, arguments, competitiveness, and stubbornness increase exponentially. This is something to be cautious about in relationships and communal life. Thus, we must be careful about the opinions of the majority. as the majority does not always equate to truth. Collective psychology can lead to people uniting against someone without just cause. They are influenced by group mentality, not correctness. This story holds deeper meaning. Even the devas in the heavenly realms divided into two camps to argue. One supporting this teacher, the other supporting that teacher. This may seem surprising. Why would it happen? The truth is, even in the celestial realms, absolute truth is not attained. Devas possess wisdom superior to humans but do not have complete understanding of the Dharma. This is why devas often come down to pay respects to a guru on earth. A guru with complete Dharma is something that devas lack, though they have more merit and greater supernatural powers. This does not mean they possess full knowledge of the Dharma. Thus, the saying great virtue makes ghosts and deities revered means that even if one is human, if their virtue is profound and they live by a noble moral code, spirits with supernatural powers must still show respect. Devas in the heavens do not always stand on the side of absolute truth. This is also why deities can be influenced. In the human realm, people can bribe officials through corruption and bribery, a practice that has existed throughout history and in every place. Similarly, people can bribe deities. If a temple is inhabited by a deity, people may offer sacrifices like fruits, roasted chickens, or ducks to ask for assistance. At that point, the deity may be swayed and use their power to grant wishes. This happens because deities still possess emotions and biases. They are not embodiments of absolute truth. Only the law of karma is truly objective and transcends everything. Therefore, there are stories of people visiting temples of deities and goddesses every year to offer sacrifices and pray for prosperity and business success. These practices are not unheard of. However, the power of a temple deity is not sufficient to cover an entire nation. Their power can only help about 10, 20, 50, or up to 100 people at most. Beyond that, their power becomes insufficient. It must be said that the divine power of the deities in temples is not sufficient to fulfill all the wishes. Whether business or trade is successful depends primarily on one's own merits, not entirely on the blessings of the deities. The power of a deity is only enough to bestow blessings on a limited number of people. And once their power is exhausted, they cannot assist any further. In fact, there are cases where the deities no longer exist because they have exhausted their accumulated merits and have been reborn elsewhere. People are unaware of this and continue to offer prayers and sacrifices. But they are not punished because these offerings are only superficial. What is notable in this story is that the fault of the monk was not significant, but it was exaggerated. In life, we often encounter similar situations where trivial matters are taken too seriously and blown out of proportion, leading to disharmony and trouble for many. If someone is at fault, let that fault remain only with them. Do not become the second person at fault, the one who spreads gossip, slanders, criticizes, and accuses, causing division and trouble. Often, the fault of the second person is greater than that of the first. If you know someone has made a mistake, let them recognize and correct it themselves instead of involving yourself and making the situation worse. Instead of spreading gossip and attacking, quietly wish that the person realizes and rectifies their mistake. In this world, no one is completely without fault. Even the Buddha once said that no one in life is wholly praised or wholly criticized. Even when doing good for some, one might still inadvertently upset others. The Buddha acknowledged that it is not always easy to please everyone. Therefore, when we see someone else's fault, we should remain silent. Let them correct their mistakes or gently advise them. We should also hope that they will recognize their mistakes and overcome them. This is the right way to live harmoniously and avoid adding unnecessary trouble to our lives and those around us. During festival seasons, when tens of thousands of people gather to pray, The power of the deities is limited. The teacher once preached that when we see someone with a fault and spread gossip about it, it is an act of cruelty and injustice. The rumors we spread will continue to circulate, while the person who made the mistake may have already repented and corrected themselves. But the damaging words persist, causing them long-term harm. Is this fair? Absolutely not. It is cruel and unfair. Thus, we must be patient and cautious in life. When we see someone at fault, be careful. For today they may be wrong, but tomorrow they may not be. They might have repented and changed within a month. Therefore, do not judge or accuse someone indefinitely, and do not become the second person at fault by criticizing others. This story also makes us realize that group psychology can create a strong stubbornness, especially when it incites competitiveness and resentment. When this collective mindset is fueled, it becomes an immensely powerful stubborn force. When driven by competitiveness and hatred, stubbornness becomes even stronger. A typical example is Germany after World War I. The German people experienced defeat, sorrow, and humiliation, and were eager for revenge. Various regimes came and went without bringing progress. At that time, Adolf Hitler grasped this psychology, joined the Nazi Party, and became its leader. He incited hatred, competitiveness, and national pride, proclaiming that the German race was the most superior and could not accept being suppressed and humiliated after World War I. With his inflammatory rhetoric, Hitler gained the support of the entire German population and was elected chancellor. Not long after, the world was engulfed in a bloody war. When Hitler appeared before crowds and gave speeches, people became frenzied, drawn by his power. He had a formidable charisma, with eyes that shone as if hypnotizing the masses. Once hatred and competitiveness were incited, the crowd became fanatic, ready to die for their leader and the ideals they worshipped. The group mentality is so dangerous that, when swept along, people can act uncontrollably and recklessly. This is a significant lesson on being cautious when considering and participating in shared opinions. Therefore, we need to be vigilant in this era when politicians are well-versed and adept at applying crowd psychology principles. They thoroughly study how to attract public support by manipulating emotions. They often create hatred and resentment to direct the public against a particular target. When such hatred spreads among many people, it becomes a great force, enough to cause significant upheavals. We can see this in recent events in Central Asian countries, where protests have erupted over minor reasons. But when hatred is incited and spreads to thousands of people, it becomes intense and turns into significant uprisings. For example, if an official is corrupt, the story is passed around not with a calm and objective attitude but with words that incite hatred. Once this hatred spreads widely enough, it will explode into significant, unnecessary events. Therefore, when we see hatred being incited among the masses, we must be careful and quickly withdraw. We could be falling into a trap set by political conspiracies or by someone using the crowd as a tool to achieve their own goals. We need to maintain our composure to avoid being swept up in this psychological torrent and becoming victims or pawns in their schemes. Another essential point is that when a disagreement arises between us and someone else, we should learn from this story and not let many people know about the disagreement. If there is a conflict between oneself and a relative or a fellow practitioner, keep it private and do not share it to avoid drawing others into taking sides, as this only spreads discord and makes it harder to resolve. Those who, when encountering conflict, share it and try to rally support can be considered petty and lacking in virtue. Conversely, those who keep silent, avoid letting others know about the disagreement, and seek to resolve it quietly are noble and virtuous. As disciples of the Buddha, We should strive to be good people and noble individuals. When disagreements arise, stay calm, remain silent, and find opportunities to reconcile instead of sharing the issue to gain support. This is the attitude of a virtuous, noble person. And it is a quality that every Buddhist disciple should remember and practice. Another point is that if we are not directly involved in a conflict but hear about it, we should also be cautious and keep silent. If we know someone dislikes another or has conflicts with them, do not spread the story everywhere. Do not say, Mr. A sees Mr. B as an enemy or Mr. B always curses Mr. A when they meet. Even if it is true that they do not like each other or have conflicts. If only a few people know, they may gradually reconcile. But if everyone knows about it, the story will be blown out of proportion and turn into a significant conflict, making them true lifelong enemies. Therefore, when seeing others in discord, remain silent. When we ourselves are in conflict, keep it private and do not share it. Another point worth noting is that when one becomes a Buddhist monk, one has already vowed to dedicate their entire being and life to the Buddha. Monks leave behind family and loved ones, parents, spouses, siblings, and worldly pleasures such as good food and fine clothing to follow the Buddha's path. They believe that the Buddha's path leads to a happiness greater than all worldly joys, a love surpassing all the love in the world. Yet, when faced with competitiveness and the desire to win, they may be willing to disregard the Buddha's teachings. In the past, not listening to the Buddha was already wrong. But nowadays, some even oppose their own teachers, accusing them of weakness or failure to distinguish right from wrong. When a teacher advises harmony, they might react harshly, claiming the teacher does not understand and continuing to argue to defend their ego. This shows that the desire for victory and competitiveness is deeply ingrained in people, even enough to overshadow the vows they made when becoming monks. This competitive nature only yields to the instinct for survival, hunger. When people are starving, they stop, but as long as they have food and strength, they will continue to argue until they achieve victory. The Buddha once said that if everyone understood that death awaits all, they would see no reason to argue. The tendency to argue and compete only yields when survival is threatened. The Buddha did not perform the function of punishment. That responsibility falls to the Dharma protectors, including deities and lay practitioners. Lay practitioners, as supporters and donors to the monks, sometimes have significant influence and can guide the Sangha's direction. When the Sangha becomes divided, neutral lay practitioners can force both sides to reconcile by declaring they will no longer offer support or donations unless peace is restored. In recent times, there have been conflicts among monks and between different Buddhist councils and orders. This happens because lay practitioners continue to take sides, supporting one faction or the other. If lay practitioners understood that such support only contributes to division and chose to withdraw completely and remain neutral, the monks would be compelled to seek reconciliation. Only when lay practitioners understand and collectively refuse to take sides will the monks cease to argue, no longer claiming themselves as the orthodox and accusing the other side of being false. At that moment, the monastic community will find harmony. However, because lay practitioners have not realized this, Buddhism continues to be divided. This event serves as a valuable lesson for all time, reminding us that if lay practitioners remain divided, the monastic community will continue to be divided as well. If dividing the monastic community is a grave sin, which the Buddha called the sin of disrupting the unity of the Sangha, and those who cause division in the Sangha will face karmic retribution in hell, then who will go to hell first? It is the lay practitioners. For their support of one side against the other fuels division within the Sangha. Therefore, if one sees the monastic community dividing, one should ask oneself where they are heading. To prevent this situation, Lay practitioners must act to stop the division within the Sangha. Lay practitioners should meet with the monks who frequently oppose other religious groups and ask them to withdraw their criticisms. Remind them that as Buddhists, they are all disciples of the Buddha, with shaved heads and monastic robes, united as one, with no distinctions between different sects or organizations. If the monks continue to cause division, lay practitioners must collectively declare that they will no longer offer support. When all Buddhists unite in this way, the Sangha will find harmony immediately. In the Buddha's time, when the masses resolutely implemented an economic boycott, the disputes within the Sangha ceased, and harmony was restored, ending conflicts that resonated from the earth to the heavens. This demonstrates the crucial role of the laity. If the majority of the laity is educated with good teachings, society and Buddhism will flourish. But if the laity does not deeply absorb righteous teachings and remains extreme, superstitious, passive, or competitive, Buddhism will decline, and society will suffer, deteriorating along with it. Therefore, the power of the laity is extremely important. We must strive to spread good teachings to everyone. But what constitutes a good teaching? No one dares to claim their teachings as perfect. Any teacher believes their teachings are good, otherwise, they would not preach them. Thus, each teacher is subjectively convinced that their teachings are valuable. If a teacher claims their teachings are number one, it is a natural human tendency. Teachers do not say their teachings are number one or anything like that, but instead encourage practitioners to seek and spread the best teachings possible. This itself is a great merit. When the masses are educated with good teachings, life in Buddhism will improve, and society will develop positively. Therefore, we need to build life, society, the world, and contribute to building Buddhism by helping those around us understand the teachings. These must be good, righteous teachings. Finding good teachings is not easy. So if we have not found them, we should sincerely pray for the Buddha's guidance. Bow down and say, in this era, many great teachers have taught various doctrines. With my limited wisdom, I do not know which teachings are correct and beneficial. Please, Buddha, help me meet a good teacher and good teachings for me to practice and spread. When we pray daily like this, the Buddha will guide us to find the right teachings. Thanks to sincere prayer, we will have the chance to encounter the right path. Teachers often believe their teachings are the best. So when a teacher praises their teachings, we should be cautious and not believe it too easily. The Buddha once said a very simple verse, competing with each other only because we forget that everyone dies. If we knew death was waiting, why argue at all? This verse is not profound in terms of doctrine but very straightforward. Why did the Buddha say such an unremarkable verse? Because at that time, the minds of the monks had declined after months of arguing. Their hearts had become shallow. So the Buddha needed to say something simple to awaken them. This lesson shows that after an argument, our minds also decline and become shallow. We should strive to avoid competitiveness and the desire to win. When we feel the urge to outdo someone, it is a sign that we have declined. The Buddha used death as a means of awakening. Because death is inevitable for everyone, rich or poor, strong or weak, wise or foolish, talkative or reserved, with real teeth or dentures, everyone must die. Death is a certainty. So the Buddha used this to remind them. Other warnings like keep arguing, and you'll have an accident or your mouth might become crooked don't apply to everyone. But no one can escape death. The lesson is that when we realize everyone will die, we will know how to let go of arguments. The monks in the story almost starved to death in the monastery due to their stubbornness. After being allowed to go out for alms, with the compassion of the people, they regained their strength to seek out the Buddha and apologize. Death is also a lesson to remind us about greed. When someone is overly obsessed with money, we only need to remind them, "What can you take with you when you die?" This simple statement is enough to startle them because they forget that death is inevitable. Money brings a strange sense of security. People feel comforted by having a pile of money in the safe. Even though life only requires basic needs like 3 meals a day and a few sets of clothes. But even when they have surplus money, they still do not feel secure. Reflecting on death helps us realize the truth about life, that everything is impermanent. And nothing is more important than living righteously, practicing, and being content. But why do some people still not feel at peace even when they have excess money? This is because they are constantly worried about the future, fearful of loss, and unable to find the inner peace needed to face the impermanence of life. The truth is that no matter how much money you accumulate, you cannot take it with you when you die. Death is certain, sparing no one, regardless of their wealth or power. Therefore, when we recognize that death is inevitable, we should know how to let go of greed and reduce our anxiety about hoarding excessive wealth. Live a life of righteousness. Share with others. And do meaningful things. In the end, life is not measured by the wealth you accumulate but by the good values you create and leave behind for those around you. The teachings of the Buddha not only remind us that death is inevitable as a way to awaken us but also to cherish life and do good deeds. Instead of arguing, competing, and chasing after fame, we should look at the true nature of life, impermanent and brief. The most important thing is to live a worthy life, filled with compassion, wisdom, and peace. We also learn that we should not focus on arguments and conflicts. When we feel the urge to win an argument, we should remind ourselves that it is a sign that our mind has declined. Stay calm. Reflect. And remember that everyone will die eventually. So why argue? We should focus on nurturing compassion and harmony. Living in a way that, when our time comes, we will have no regrets. To build a good life, each person needs to cultivate virtues, spread kindness, and contribute to making society better. The value of life does not lie in material possessions but in how we live and treat others. This not only makes our life meaningful but also helps create a harmonious, loving community. Many people in life, even if their family needs only 3.000.000 or 5.000.000 to cover monthly expenses, feel unsettled when they earn 10.000.000. They keep pushing to earn more, working harder so that their monthly income must reach 50.000.000 before they feel at ease. It is a strange feeling that drives people to continue chasing a false sense of security. In reality, many people exhaust themselves earning money, enduring hardship and sometimes making mistakes just to maintain that false sense of security. This is when they need to be reminded that when death comes, they cannot take money or possessions with them, only karma, good or bad, follows them. So why toil endlessly, committing sins or making mistakes, only to leave everything behind at the end? Money and fame are not values that can be taken with us beyond death. Those who are envious also need to be reminded by death. Envy only makes the heart restless. But when death comes, what is there to compete for? Life is not meant for envy and rivalry. Reflecting on death makes people pause and reconsider. Similarly, those who are prone to anger need to be awakened. Some people become so furious that they puff up and glare. But if they think about the people lying lifeless after a tsunami, they might reconsider. Those people, just minutes before the wave, could have been as angry as anyone else. But then, in an instant, they became lifeless bodies, scattered, with nothing left. Reflecting on death helps people pause, control their anger, and live more calmly. Meditation on death, known in Buddhism as death contemplation, is a valuable practice that helps us face death rather than avoid it. Life is what is worth living for. While death is often seen as sorrowful and should be avoided. But the truth is, death is unavoidable. And everyone must experience it. So, instead of avoiding it, we should face it and think about it beforehand to prepare mentally. When we think about and confront death, we come to realize many truths about life. It helps us understand what is truly valuable, dismiss what is unimportant, and live a more meaningful life filled with compassion, wisdom, and peace. Live as if tomorrow is your last day. Live today as if it were your final day. When we think like this, we naturally live more beautifully, almost becoming saints. Imagine that tomorrow we all die. This is not a curse but a way to reflect and gain a deep understanding of impermanence. If we know that we will die tomorrow, what should we do today? Certainly not trying to earn more money or hoard wealth. What we would do is reach out to loved ones, send farewell messages, and apologize to those we have hurt. It would be messages and phone calls to express love, give reminders, or share small gifts. Everything would revolve around expressing sincere affection, mending relationships, and creating warmth with one another. When we know we will die tomorrow, today we will act with sincere affection. Thus, the reason we sometimes behave without affection is that we do not think death can come unexpectedly. But if we always remember that death can come at any time, we will naturally focus on what truly matters: love, compassion, forgiveness, and humanity. All resentment, jealousy, and greed will be cast aside. We will try to repair and mend relationships to depart in peace. In Buddhism, the practice called death contemplation, facing death, is a valuable practice. When we think about death, we appreciate life and the people around us more. Living this way helps us become less stubborn, less competitive, and avoid irrational conflicts. Even if it is not tomorrow, one day we will certainly die. So, what should we do from now? We should practice and accumulate merit to prepare for the journey to the next world. When we die, nothing can be taken with us except for our merit and good karma. All assets, fame, and status must be left behind. Therefore, from now on, let us live and do meaningful things, building merit so that we can peacefully embark on a new journey when death comes. Even if someone buys us the most beautiful coffin, it must be left behind. No one can carry that coffin to the next world. The only thing we can take with us is our merit. Thus, when we are aware that everyone will die, we should strive every hour and every minute to accumulate merit. We should do as many good deeds as possible, treat everyone kindly, and pray to the Buddha continuously, hoping for his guidance. People who live without thinking about death often compete for material possessions first. When everyone has enough to eat and wear, competition shifts to intangible things such as prestige, opinions, or emotions. People argue to assert their views, wanting to stand out from others. But the root of the problem is not willing to let others be better than oneself. That is the nature of ordinary people. If anyone has the mindset of wanting to give the good to others, that person has the nature of a saint. Those who think this way will be loved by the Buddhas and deities. Usually, we do not easily give good things to others, we want to be the best. But if a person has the thought of wanting others to surpass them, that person shows signs of holiness. A person who has the mindset of selflessness has the blood of a saint. Like the story about acts of kindness on social media, there was a boy in school. Kind, ethical, and strong, who participated in a race. In the first round, he won, making his family on the stands overjoyed. The next day, in the second round of the race, the boy led the race, maintained his pace, and could have won. But as he approached the finish line, he gradually slowed down and ultimately came behind 5 or 6 other runners. After the race, his parents asked, "You had enough strength to win. Why did you slow down and let others pass?" The boy replied, "I already won once. Today, I wanted to let someone else win." The story ends with the title 2 victories. The first time, he won over his friends physically. But the second time, he won over his own selfishness and desire to win. That is the greatest victory, overcoming oneself. That boy truly had the blood of a saint, a sign of altruism and nobility. Those who genuinely rejoice in others' success, not just with a forced smile or empty congratulations, truly have a saintly nature. However, not all acts of yielding are correct. There are situations where yielding can be a mistake or cause harm. For example, if we yield our platform or opportunity to speak to someone who will use that opportunity to spread hatred or division, that act of yielding is a mistake. And we may incur guilt for enabling evil to spread. Or in an organization, if we yield an important position to someone who is greedy and malicious, that is a major mistake, as it can harm the organization and those involved. Similarly, if we use our reputation to endorse someone who lacks morality, leading others to trust and follow them, we also bear guilt. That person may exploit the trust and credibility to commit wrongful acts. Thus, yielding is good, but we must be wise to avoid negative consequences from inappropriate concessions. We have been discussing using death as a means to awaken people. However, the truth is that many things motivate people to plan beyond death, making death no longer a source of fear. Some individuals even make plans for what will happen after their death. So the idea of death does not deter them but rather drives them to continue acting. For example, a wealthy person. If someone tells him, "Why are you accumulating wealth? You cannot take it with you when you die," he might respond, "It doesn't matter, I have written a will, leaving my fortune for my descendants." Hence, the desire for wealth and accumulation continues relentlessly. Such people are not afraid of death but continue pursuing wealth, believing that what they do will hold value after they pass away. A religious leader developing his sect is also not afraid of death. If someone says, "Why do you strive so hard? You will die eventually," he might answer, "Precisely because I know I will die. I must work to ensure my sect continues and grows after I am gone." Therefore, the more they are reminded of death, the harder they work. The same applies to national leaders. They often organize and plan for the nation's future after they pass away to ensure stability and development. If we try to use death to caution them, it only motivates them to work more vigorously, aiming to leave everything secure and prosperous after they leave. So, for those who are not deterred or afraid of death, what can we use to awaken them? We must use deeper, morally and spiritually significant concepts to make them realize that success and fame are fleeting without merit and compassion. We must remind them that even if they plan for what comes after their death, the most important thing is how they live, how they treat others, and the virtues they leave behind. Only an understanding of karma, the true value of life, can make them pause and reflect. Let them see that what matters is not material legacy but the spiritual legacy, merit, and compassion. Only then will they truly awaken and realize that all their plans are meaningless without a foundation of ethics and profound humanity. Yes, to awaken those whose vision extends beyond death, we must use karma, retribution, and rebirth. People need to understand that after death, the cycle of rebirth and karma continues. Their actions in this life will affect not just their current existence but their future lives. If they use any means to achieve glory and fame, they need to understand that consequences will follow. Immoral actions will lead to future lives of suffering, poverty, and social disdain. Understanding the eternal nature of karma can make them reconsider their actions. Bodhisattvas are capable of seeing the cycle of rebirth over thousands of lifetimes. When they perform even the smallest action, they can see its effects stretching out over hundreds of lives. Such wisdom and foresight are lessons that those with great ambition and intelligence should learn. They need to understand that their work and actions not only create material legacies but also have lasting impacts on future existences. In the case of the monks whom the Buddha admonished, he used death to caution them because, at that time, they had just endured suffering and their spirits had declined after many disputes. The Buddha's words were simple but carried deep meaning, reminding them that all competition and contention become meaningless in the face of death. But for those with grand aspirations, they must be awakened by greater concepts like retribution and the impact of karma to realign their lives and deeds. Today, as we study this verse, we must deeply understand its meaning. The reality is that people often plan and strategize far beyond death. And in those cases, using death to caution them may not instill fear. Only karma and the understanding of retribution can truly awaken them, helping them slowly realize and adjust their lives and actions. Arguing and insisting on winning to the point of causing division within the Sangha is a grave sin. Dividing people, dividing deities, disrespecting the Buddha, and failing to honor elders are all serious offenses. These actions lead to severe consequences in future lifetimes, such as being born with physical deformities, being reborn as an animal, living in poverty, and being despised by others. To make people fear and avoid wrongdoing, we can awaken them by emphasizing these dreadful consequences, such as walking with uneven steps or having hair that only grows on one side, causing them to worry. To avoid arguments and conflicts, we should keep the following in mind. 1. Do not broadly accuse others, refrain from criticizing and condemning others. It is best to look at everyone with sympathy and focus on constructive correction. 2. Do not spread others' faults widely, even if someone has indeed made a mistake. Avoid spreading it to prevent causing greater discord. 3. Keep conflicts from spreading. If there is a disagreement, let only those involved know and resolve it among themselves, without involving outsiders who could complicate matters. 4. Practice yielding the right to others during disputes. Be willing to concede and admit mistakes, offering apologies and seeking reconciliation. However, do not yield in situations where it would mean allowing a malicious person to take control or do harm. 5. Learn to give up personal opinions to accept the views of the Buddha and one's teacher. The Buddha and one's teacher are always wiser. So know how to let go of personal ego and listen to their more enlightened guidance. By practicing these principles, we can avoid serious consequences and live harmoniously, in accordance with the spirit of the Dharma. The 6th point is to practice thinking about death. When death comes, it ends everything and makes things that seemed important no longer matter. In these precious moments of life, why don't we cherish and love one another? Instead of spending time arguing and accusing each other, contemplating death helps us value life, encouraging us to live with love and harmony rather than conflict. The 7th point is to remember the karma we carry after death. Death is not the end, sins and merits will follow us. So, what are we preparing to take with us now? If we spend our time arguing and disputing, we will not accumulate good deeds. We should live with love and accumulate merit to bring positive things with us into the next life. The 8th point is to think about the collective fate of Buddhism and the world. We need to recognize that Buddhism requires unity and the world needs love, unity, and peace. Therefore, we should avoid arguments and conflicts. When we think about greater things, minor issues will no longer disturb our hearts. making us stubborn, resentful, or aggressive. When our minds are directed towards great ideals, the strength of Buddhism and the peace of the world, we will know how to let go of trivial matters and not be bothered by them. Finally, practice nurturing compassion. When compassion is strong, we can easily forgive, yield, and live harmoniously with everyone. Namo Sakyamuni Buddha.